Thousands of volunteers are helping earthquake victims, both local and from abroad. They've rushed to assist millions in need, pulling hundreds from the rubble and aiding the injured. While the selfless work can be highly rewarding, there can also be a cost. We'll look at the potential psychological toll of working in and witnessing one of the worst natural disasters of the century. I'm Andrea Sankey, and today's newsmakers are earthquake volunteers. After the February 6th twin earthquakes, volunteers from over 80 countries rushed to Turkey's aid. Some teams came with specialized skills and equipment. Others simply dropped what they were doing to help wherever needed. Day after day, teams on the ground searched through the rubble to pull out survivors. Others set up tents, made meals, and offered psychological support to the victims. While many of the international rescue teams have returned home, there are still hundreds of people helping with recovery. Ali Can Pamir takes a look now at the massive efforts of volunteers.
After the devastating earthquakes, more than 700,000 volunteers signed up to help Turkey. These Turkish and international rescuers got to work in 11 provinces, and their deeds were at times rewarded. The Hungarian team saved an 18-month-old baby in Hatay, which even moved the rescuers to tears. Hungary's Turkey ambassador, Viktor Mattis, says the toddler is among more than 20 people rescued by his countrymen and women. Volunteer Turkish miners also brought their skills to the area. They ended up pulling more than 400 people from the rubble, with methods used in coal mines. Meanwhile, the Chinese team was active across the hardest-hit provinces, including Adıyaman, Kahramanmaraş, and Malatya, and rescued 6 people using precise planning.
We immediately rushed to the local provincial emergency management organization to collect the task. I went there in person and talked for 5 minutes. When we got the assigned task site, I informed my team to send out a search team. The rest of the members came later as they have to prepare the equipment. Our time is precious. In a word, our mission is to save people, find possible survivors, successfully get them out of debris, and safely transfer them to a local medical institute.
And it's hard work. The rescuers stress patience is key at situations like these, and that they've witnessed plenty of it from survivors on ground zero.
We know this is going to take quite a long time to get over, but the resilience that they have shown, the people that we have met and the families we've met, we know that they will get through this. We know that they are strong enough.
For some volunteers, the rescue missions also hold a personal meaning. They're here because Turkey had helped their country in time of need.
All these members, they are actually volunteer drivers. They do a lot of rescue in the front line in Ukraine, and we saw the news what happened. And I'm Korean American, so I know these Turkish people helped Korean when we were having difficulties during the war. So I asked my friend, can we help Turkey? I think it's time to pay them back.
And as some volunteer groups end their search missions to go home, their help stands as a vital contribution in saving more than 100,000 lives.
So though it can be overwhelmingly rewarding to save lives in the wake of disaster, the psychological impact of witnessing such destruction should not be underestimated. And joining me now to talk more about what drives and rewards volunteers, as well as what consequences they might suffer, are from Idlib, Syria, Ismail Abdullah, a volunteer with the White Helmets. From London, Halit Karakaya, spokesperson for the West London Turkish Volunteers Organization, And from Istanbul, Mehmet Yuksel, founder and CEO of Missafir, a platform connecting earthquake survivors in need of accommodation with homeowners able to donate space. Thanks all so much for being with us. Ismail, let me just establish where you stand, as you've not only served as a volunteer in the aftermath of these quakes, you've also worked in areas destroyed by war. First, explain why you do what you do, knowing you could die, saving the lives of people you mostly don't even know.
It started from the very beginning when the uprising started and the bombing started on our region and our country. Our motive and out of our human nature was to respond and to help the others who are in need. And after doing this and carrying out our duty to our people, we become like this is our only role in life, just to save, just to help the others. And now me and all the volunteers in the White Helmets, and from my experience over the 10 years of in search and rescue operations, we're doing this because we believe that every life deserves to live, and we can rescue anyone who in need. And this is what happens in the earthquake. We worked for more than a week, 24 hours, to save and to help those in need beneath the rubble and the wounded, the homeless people. And now we're doing this for those who were affected by the deadly impacts of the earthquake. We're helping them to recover. It's our human nature to help, and anyone, I think anyone in the world who hearing us now, if he or she sees anybody suffering, the normal response and natural response is to help and to provide help for those.
Right. I mean, it should be a normal response, but do you believe that anyone can really do what you do and see what you see and still be this strong and brave and go forward after a decade doing this work?
To be honest, it's a heavy burden, and it's nightmares will come after anyone who will be in this and carrying our search and rescue operation, seeing the painful pictures, seeing the blood, seeing the people suffering. Of course, not all the people can do this. I met many other volunteers who tried to join us. After one operation, they will leave immediately. They can't stand this. They cannot handle the pain from this scenes. They cannot. Even people, became like sick of the scenes, the blood, the horrible pictures, the horrible scenes, how you can deal with the parts of children, all of, the picture, the painful picture of the massacres, the bombing, how the people calling for help and you rushing and forgetting yourself, your family, your safety, just to try to save the others.
You just cited what I was next going to ask about, your own family. You have your own children, your own family. What do volunteers need to understand about what they go through? How do they support you? How important is it that you get that support from them? And what about when the psychological effect is too much for your own family?
This type of work, will change one's life completely, not partially, but completely. Your family will support you, and any family will support you in this what you're doing for your people. But at some point, you will feel yourself that you're forgetting your family, and you always worried about them. Dealing with bombing in the area, and you're thinking about another bombing will hit your house. In the first place, you putting your family in danger. I'm talking about my case, my situation is different from others.
But
You're putting your family in danger because you are doing this. We're doing this. There are people in the other side. They don't want to rescue the others. They
Indeed.
don't want us to document this what we're doing in saving
But
people and rescuing people. And this is this psychological impact on ourselves and our family and our children. Sometimes we feel like we're not human beings anymore because we use it to see death, blood, you know.
But personally, for you, at that cost, it's still worth it to help these people, to save these lives.
Of course, for me and everyone, and every now, after all the decade of carrying out our operation, we still and our motive and to do what we're doing.
Right.
I'll give an example. When we save the videos that you saw on the YouTube and on other platforms, how we rescued many children, many women from under alive and healthy. That's our exact mission, to save those, and that what keep us going
Right.
in our job.
Let me turn to Halit. Halit, you help organize volunteers. There are, are those who come to volunteer, though, in these disaster areas very admirably at their own expense with so much goodwill, but sometimes so little experience and sometimes very few actual field skills. What do you tell them? Should they come because all the help that is out there is needed, or can they actually hinder efforts and at too great a cost to even themselves? Do they understand fully what they're getting involved in?
This isn't an area that I can comment on. We're based in London, and what we were focusing on is sending aid in terms of clothing, blankets, and tents from the UK to London. We've not gone there ourselves. And what my colleague just a bit earlier was talking about is what we're doing is just a drop in the ocean for what these guys are doing. I mean, they're saving lives. We're trying to comfort people with stuff that they've lost.
My apologies. I was under the impression you also do organize the ground volunteers. Let me turn to Mehmet, though, who I understand you do something interesting from here in Istanbul. You're also not in the field. And you organize homes for people through people that can volunteer their own spaces. It's interesting because people can be rather protective of their own spaces, so offering that to a stranger, it does take some trust. How are you going about this, and how much participation are you really getting? Because the need, I need to stress this, the need right now is huge. There are millions of homeless people.
Yeah, so I'm on the different angle than my friends, my colleagues. We are the property management company, and we majorly focus on short and mid-term rentals. Now we operate in different countries other than Turkey, but as Missafir, we have worked to become brand that adds to value to this country and to the world from since day one. Those we were aware of the responsibilities after the disaster deeply set in us on country February 6th. So what we did, since my hometown, Hatay Iskenderun, was strongly affected by the earthquake, my family is also affected. Thanks to God that they are alive and we haven't lost anyone in my close family, but so many people are displaced. So we looked what we could do. So I was really able to relate more easily with the survivors of this tragedy. So after the earthquake, we quickly mobilized and stayed our relief efforts as Missafir. First thing we did in collaboration with our volunteer homeowners, we opened our home for the victims of earthquake and organized their arrival. So this one was the second day of the earthquake. Within the scope of the earthquake relief aid, we opened the doors like more than 100 property in 12 cities and more than 100 people. And those were Missafir and the homeowners' homes. And then afterwards, we aim to reach wider community through our platform, which helps to connect people who need a roof over their heads with the people who have their home to accommodate them. It calls Misafir misiniz platform, which means you are our guest in Turkish.
Okay.
So this platform may have had helped more than thousands people to reach temporary accommodation and relief for a while. So those were in terms of accommodation we provide.
And that's great. I mean, but what experiences are these people having? Are you finding the feedback you're getting, especially from homeowners, has been feeling that this is something extremely, I guess, rewarding that they've done?
Yeah.
They've taken a risk for potentially a risk for strangers, allowing them into their homes to take these properties at no cost, and that it has worked out, and it's something more people need to think about doing because of the need at this time.
True. Our homeowner were helping at the time of the pandemic times to workers in hospitals. So we are a little bit familiar with those cases. And thanks to them, at the first day, they message us that they want to open their home to who are affected by the earthquake. We didn't even ask in that first day, but they asked us to open it. So thanks to them, it was really a good effort. But of course, those people, arrival of those people are a problem. And when they come in, when they start to accommodate, their billing of the home is another problem. And also the food, clothes, and etc. So what we did in here, it was first we cooperate with our homeowner, but later we try to widen our campaign and we start to talk with other startups. We are a tech startup. One of the startup we get collaborated with they agree to pay the bills until people leave their homes. Okay. Another startup, they said they will be providing food and the clothes until they leave to their permanent homes. And there was another startup we were working in our company, the psychologist. So they help us with the teammates plus with the who are our guests from the affected by the earthquake. So they had them in the case of the psychologist, and they talk to them every day, and they try to help in this case. So we try to help as much as we can from the either side.
From the outside.
So hopefully we can help.
Yeah, I want to ask Ismail then about that in particular. You've heard from now two other people who are not working on the ground, but whose work outside the country and outside the area is incredibly important to what you do on the ground. I mean, how much do their efforts to coordinate, to receive and send donations to where you are, provide equipment, provide the skills, how important is it to you to get your job done and to support you also psychologically and emotionally?
Yeah, it's their work. It's very important to the teams of the field for our teams or all the teams who work in the field for sure. And the psychological support, it's very important for those who have now worked for years dealing with the disasters, massacres, and it's very, very important because I give you an example in a quick. Until now, there's picture is in my mind, going hunting me from the 2014 until now, and this is getting worse in my let me say in my mind that how the horrible things, how dealing and talking with the people, all of that changed from before getting in volunteering with and in search and rescue. So it's very important to support those who are in the field, because I think from my point of view, I'm not professional, maybe in the future coming years that will affect those who dealing with this disasters and those painful scenes. Sometimes I regret for something I couldn't save someone, but in the first place I didn't have the power. I didn't have the maybe that time. Maybe he was dead before I reach him. But this actually a lot of things goes in the minds of those who volunteer. The psychological support and the everything to support them in the coming years, maybe to recover them the impacts of those images and painful scenes.
Very quickly, though, right now, are you getting the support that you need in the field where you are?
Given to the situation right now about the disaster and the earthquake, before the earthquake, we were going in this process in one of the programs, and after we are working on this to even let me say this. There are teams like let me say about the media team in the institution, and I'm talking specific of those who are video editing. They watching and they watch it every single clip and carefully, and this was hard impact on them. All of that, yeah, we were working as an institution, and in the future, and we have program to support us and support those who survived from the earthquake.
Ismail, we're going to have to leave it there. I'd like to thank all three of my panelists really so much for being with us on this segment of The Newsmakers. Now, as mentioned, sometimes all the goodwill and emotional strength of volunteers cannot prevent the psychological challenges they might face. Joining me now from London is Dilek Aygun. She's a psychotherapist specializing in trauma. Dilek, thanks so much for being with us. You know, we obviously all admire the courage and the kindness of volunteers that give so much to other people. But when it comes to especially first-time volunteers just starting out, what do they need to understand about the potential psychological aftermath of this work?
Yeah, I mean, thanks for having me, first of all. And I would like to express my sadness and sorrow over this devastating earthquake. My heart and thoughts are with all this affected by this tragedy. When a disaster strikes, using the help of volunteers an incredibly valuable resource in providing timely response, especially when professional resources may be overloaded. So it's very, very incredibly valuable work what they do. But obviously the mental and physical strain volunteers take on during disaster operations are extremely high as well. While volunteering can be extremely rewarding activity, and that can actually kind of make people more connected with their community, and then they will kind of, be more resilient, and, they will be feeling really good about themselves. But at the same time, there will be lots of difficulties that they may be facing in disasters like this. First of all, after natural disasters like earthquake, the whole population has increased vulnerability to develop some difficult psychological issues. So the most common one is post-traumatic stress disorder, in short PTSD, which is a mental health problem triggered by direct or indirect exposure to a life-threatening event. It's characterized by intrusive, unwanted memories of the traumatic event, nightmares, or like some difficult emotions like feeling irritable, guilty, getting upset with trauma reminders, and lots of negative changes in thinking and mood. Sometimes the sufferers of trauma might even freeze in place at the time of the trauma. They may even become unresponsive, even in dangerous situations. So the shocked state of mind will prevent them seeking help. So, and also, of course, other psychological conditions like depression, fatigue, somatic symptoms, panic disorder, sleep difficulties, even addictions. So, of course, volunteering sector, working within the volunteering sector is associated with an increased risk of developing these mental health difficulties, given the nature of the disaster settings, of course, the exposure level.
Right.
So compared to professional workers, volunteers may have similar symptoms with actually direct survivors.
Yeah. The irony here is that at the worst of times, you actually see the best of humanity. So how do volunteers reconcile seeing so much destruction and cruelty and suffering with so much inspiration and beauty? How do you help them find that balance?
I think this is a question that can be, understood in a wider setting, because, we need to be kind of thinking about the potential effect of the impact of the disaster work on the volunteers. Because first of all, these volunteers may be directly affected. They may be coming from the community itself, they may be traumatized by the event themselves. So they may be the victims because usually at the early stages, so you kind of get these just walk-in volunteers, they actually usually from the site. So they may have lost family members and their houses. So most of these people, they're actually kind of in that fight and flight response. So they're actually kind of only on the survival mode, and they are actually kind of prioritize the life of others, but they would be also kind of the victims themselves. So they will be already vulnerable at the beginning of the work and understandably at a higher risk of developing the psychological difficulties. But at the same time, I would be worth to mention that non-affected volunteers who has got no tie to the affected area can also be at risk by indirectly being exposed to the traumatic event. Because of this, the disaster setting, like being most sudden and unpredictable and very chaotic, and they often the volunteers are often quickly selected based on the urgent need. So it's no time to actually at this stage to think about how they're doing psychologically. And because they usually work with this kind of unclear task descriptions, and they kind of go into the settings that may be really unfamiliar, unsafe, and even physically demanding.
Indeed. Okay, Dilek, unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there. I'd like to thank you so much for joining us on this edition of The Newsmakers, and thank our viewers, of course, for being with us as well. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter, and do be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Andrea Sankey. We'll see you next time.